What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle Pod here on Wager Talk TV. It's Tuesday, so here to help you get through a juicy midweek slate of college football. It's me, Brian Power, and my good buddy, Adam Trigg. I know it was a great football weekend for you, specifically in college. How's it going, man?
Yeah, football went great. It's going good. Me and your good pal CT Betts got through with 3 of our Survivor entries. So we still have 3 entries in Circa Survivor, which is awesome. However, we lost some ground in the Super Contest. I think we were like 2-3 or something like that, which isn't terrible, but loses you ground when you're up near the top. Otherwise, good football weekend, good college basketball. I got to get out of that mode. I've been doing these preview videos, Brian. No, good football weekend. 3-1 college football, 3-1 NFL. So hopefully we do it again this week, and it starts tonight. I got client plays tonight. We got 3 games on Tuesday from like our favorite conferences, Brian. So looking forward to kicking them around with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a winning Saturday for me as well. Hit another 5% play on Arizona State. Came right down to the end there. I know that I would hate to steal Prez and Teddy's intellectual property of what bettors learned, but what I learned on Saturday is I don't know how many more games I want to bet on the Pac-12 network because I bet the entire triple header and couldn't watch any of them. I was going crazy looking at my computer waiting for those scores to come home.
Brian, it's funny, I think there's correlation. Pac-12 got themselves into a bad TV deal, and like now you see the conference is going to be no more. There's something linked there. Pac-12 network, I do get it on Spectrum Cable here in Central New York, but a lot of cable providers don't have it, and it's been a thing for years now. And who knows? All of that stuff plays in, and now you see the Pac-12 is like the Pac nothing at this point after this year or whatever. So, interesting stuff there. Glad you hit with Arizona State. Saw you got a nice little hook. Though I think you were on that early in the week. I think you had 4, so good number there for you. To get that home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let me tell you how embarrassed the Pac-12 should be here, Trigg. You referenced some of our favorite teams and favorite conferences of these midweek games. Even Conference USA has a reputable TV deal. We can watch every Conference USA game midweek, but, Coach Prime in Colorado were off in the ether on Saturday. So let's get to these games. You mentioned there are 3 on Tuesday. I know you had your eye on one that you wanted to talk about here on this Hustle Short for Tuesday.
Yeah, so I actually have client plays in the other 2. So tune into College Football Daily, our daily show later today to get the one of them, and then the other one's up on my page. The odd one out, I actually still have a pretty strong opinion and didn't get to the window with this. But Brian, these 2 teams feel far more even to me than the odds makers are suggesting here. It's an interesting matchup for this reason. The last couple of years, this has been one of like the marquee Sun Belt games, right? Like Coastal, App State. It's almost been like one of the games that decided this conference the past couple of years in terms of where these teams have been. And now it's like, I would say both of these teams have taken a step back. I think the perception is Coastal is not very good this year, which is probably true, but the way the odds makers have lined this game suggests that Appalachian State is still this great team. And I just don't agree with that at all. I think Coastal, in the context of this matchup, is getting penalized for their losses being in the Sun Belt because, of course, they're 0-2 in conference play. Whereas Appalachian State has 2 losses, but those 2 losses to North Carolina and Wyoming. Granted, both on the road, but I mean, there were only the line in that Wyoming game was 3. That's not exactly like just a great loss for them. So I just think with the fact that their losses are a little bit more forgivable, it's created like this sort of perception that Appalachian State is a significantly better team. And that's what I really disagree with here. So, Coastal Carolina, I already referenced, are 0-2 in Sun Belt play, kind of creates a little bit of a desperation spot for them because, I mean, if they start 0-3, there is some talent in this conference this year. It's going to be hard for them to play their way back into the mix from 0-3. So certainly a huge game for the Chanticleers from that regard. But as far as the matchup, you look at Coastal, they hung around with UCLA. That Jacksonville State team we're going to talk about that everybody loves. Who handed them their one loss, Brian? It was Coastal Carolina, and they did it with ease, right? I mean, double digit. Yeah. I think they won by 14. And of course, we've seen Jacksonville State churn out all these great results. Coastal Carolina had no problem with them. So I still think that like there's some things to like about Coastal here. Of course, both these teams get about 10 days to prepare for this game. And again, I keep coming back to the fact that this matchup feels even. Appalachian State defensively, metrics are down across the board. Coastal Carolina hasn't been able to run the ball all year, but Appalachian State's horrible against the run. So who wins out there, right? Like, does that mean Appalachian State gets some stops against the run, or is Coastal Carolina going to be able to run the ball? Because if they're able to run the ball, then I think there's an avenue for some points here for Coastal. And I think if Coastal is scoring, it's going to be very difficult for Appalachian State to pull away in this game. Appalachian State's been really poor in the red zone this year. They haven't really finished drives, settle for a lot of field goals. They don't always, put points on the board. And Coastal Carolina's red zone defense has actually been one of their strengths. So I didn't get to the window with this one. I just don't trust Coastal enough at this point going on the road. But there's certainly value on the visitors here, in my opinion. So I lean Coastal Carolina plus the points. This was the one that missed my card of the 3 games tonight. But I wouldn't be dying to lay points here with App State. This feels like a far more even game than the odds makers are suggesting.
I am inclined to agree with that. I thought the line was a touch too high when I saw it as well. You mentioned there are 3 games. Of course, that's the Sun Belt. Okay, we have lots of conferences are joining the midweek fray this week. We've got Big 12, Mountain West, Pac-12 with Deion Sanders in Colorado hosting Stanford on Friday. The Americans involved, but it's mostly Conference USA. Conference USA has 2 games tonight in addition to the Sun Belt game Trigg just broke down. You've got a game between Middle Tennessee and Louisiana Tech. Those are 2 teams that I struggle to get a read on. They were involved in wild games last week, both coming up short on the scoreboard. But the game I want to talk about, Trigg mentioned this team earlier, Jacksonville State. They are hosting Liberty, who I believe is the best team in Conference USA. And I'll say this, credit Rich Rod and Jacksonville State, okay? At 5-1, they have already eclipsed their season win total, but they've been living dangerously each of the last 2 weeks, okay, guys? They had to rally back from double-digit deficits both times. They trailed Sam Houston State 21-7 in the first half before coming back to win that game 35-28 in overtime and stealing the cover, oh, by the way, a 6.5-point road chalk. In fact, just to get that game in overtime, the Gamecocks needed a last-minute touchdown and 2-point conversion. Then you go to last week. Jacksonville State's down 23-7 at the half to Middle Tennessee and winds up rallying for the 45-30 win, and they cover the spread to boot. They were outgained there, 563-401, but forced 4 turnovers. One of those, a fumble return for a touchdown. So my view for this week against Liberty, again, who I think is the class of Conference USA, one of just 14 remaining unbeatens across college football, I think Jacksonville State's luck runs out. Of course, if you know me, I'm not really going to be in a rush to lay nearly a touchdown on the road in college football. I do think if you play the side, Liberty is the right side in this one. But let's look at the total. Couple of hours before we recorded this show, it hit 59. We saw some buyback. Now it's bouncing back and forth. I know Liberty's got a great offense, and they're probably going to put up points tonight. But Jacksonville State, they've only allowed 17.5 points per game. They have forced 15 takeaways. They've also been pretty stout against the run. And Liberty's play calling last week against Sam Houston was a little perplexing. They ran it on 43 of 62 offensive snaps, not exactly airing the ball out. As for this Jacksonville State offense, I don't think we're going to see the kind of second-half magic we've seen those last 2 weeks. So I like the under here in Liberty, Jacksonville State. 58.5, I believe, is the current number you can get per the wagertalk.com odds screen. And that would be my only lean for Tuesday. I do have 2 midweek bets up, one for Wednesday, one for Friday. You can get those right at wagertalk.com right now.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
So,
I'm not going to
any
go
thoughts
into a
there?
break. Yeah, well, my thoughts are I played Liberty is a play for me tonight, 4% play. I'm not going to go into a breakdown. You just broke down the game. If you want to hear my take on that game, watch College Football Show or look for the clip that I'll probably post on it. But I will say this. We sit here trying to read line movement, always get the best number and stuff like that. And I psyched myself out on this one. I thought, so it was 6 yesterday. I talked about this game on Wager Talk today. And I was holding out for maybe getting a 5.5 or a 5, because I think line movement is somewhat correlated week to week with certain teams. And if you go back the last couple of weeks, right, Jacksonville State 2 weeks ago against Sam Houston State ended up going off 7. So if you waited there and you were lucky enough to get the 7 with Sam Houston State, you avoided like just a horrific beat because Jacksonville State, of course, won by 7 in overtime. Last week, Jacksonville State, I mean, that game went off like 2.5, all the way down from 5. I think Jacksonville State took so much money that they went off of as a 2.5-point dog when you could have got 5.5 earlier in the week. So when I saw this sort of go back from 7 to 6, I said, do I want to jump in at 6? Is this going to go to 5.5, 5? Because certainly all that Jacksonville State money was there. I think the fact that this is now 6.5 everywhere, I expect this to be 7 by kickoff. The way that this is moving tells me that there's some pretty respected money on Liberty, laying the points with Liberty. I know I jumped in at 6.5, and so that's a client play for me. Like I said, I'll break it down on the football show. But just some interesting sort of, what I noticed with the way the line was moving in this game. And I think it suggests Liberty is a pretty good bet. And hopefully in your case, Brian, it's that Liberty defense that comes to play. Because I agree with you. I think they're just a cut above the teams that Jacksonville State has been playing. And so I'm hoping they keep that Jacksonville State offense at bay for the sake of your under tonight.
Yeah, and like I said, they've been living dangerously. Jacksonville State, they easily could have lost the last 2 weeks. They win them instead. Hey, credit Rich Rod. A great first season in the FBS. You talk about line movement. I'm looking at the wagerstalk.com odds screen right now, just the rest of these midweek games. Just some real fun games on Wednesday. UTEP, FIU, Sam Houston State, New Mexico State. You, me, and 6 other people are going to be watching those 2 games. We've seen FIU take money. We've seen Sam Houston State take money. Sam Houston State, I feel terrible for this team that they have no wins. They've been playing really hard in every game except Houston. SMU's taking money on Thursday against East Carolina. Looks like Houston's taking some money against WVU also on Thursday. Tulane all the way up to -4.5. I don't know what's going on in the last 10 minutes there. I mentioned Coach Prime is a double-digit favorite against Stanford on Friday, and then Fresno State looking to bounce back off its first loss of the year at Utah State. Second straight week in elevation for the Bulldogs. That is an 8 o'clock start on Friday, and those are your midweek college football games, or weekday, I should say, because by Friday it's no longer midweek. Anything you'd like to offer on those games, Trigg, or would you like to transition now to NFL Survivor discussion?
I'll offer one thought on those games. It's in the Colorado Stanford game. My thought there is, I think if you weren't Brian Power last week with a nice big bet on Arizona State, I think you may have missed the boat, like the chance to just like bet against Colorado because I think that's sort of worn off at this point. And like I wouldn't be in a rush to take 12 with Stanford. If anything, you know what I mean? I make that more like 14. And I think there's this like weird dynamic with Colorado where it's like they are better than they were supposed to be. Their first team to go over their season win total. Like they're a better team than they were supposed to be in a lot of aspects. But they're not the team that everyone made them out to be after they beat TCU and Nebraska. So it's like they're in this like weird sort of limbo. But after last week, I just think that like, I don't know. It's like I still think they're pretty good in relation to some of these lesser teams in their conference. I kind of think they smashed Stanford. I don't know if that'll make my card. I don't know if I'm down to lay that number, but I'm not going against them in that spot. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, Arizona State's probably the second worst Pac-12 team from a power rating standpoint. Stanford is the worst. Stanford, I mean, they lost to Sacramento State at home. Now, I know the head coach used to coach at Sacramento State, so there's some familiarity there. But, I mean, Stanford's real bad. I mean, real bad. I think other than Virginia, they might be the worst Power 5 team in America. They might be the worst Power 5 team in America.
And the other thing, I mean, you were somewhat fortunate to hit. You know what I mean? Like the Colorado pulled away at the very end there. Yeah. Like, so, yeah, again, that's just a thought. Like, in general, I thought that number was short. Of all the games you just mentioned, that's the one I kind of still had on my radar. Like, man, it's kind of I feel like you're almost getting a good number with Colorado, which has really not been the case lately. So, but I don't know if that'll make my card. Just a thought I had on that game.
And I'll say one more thing. I feel good about my bet SMU to win the American. I think they're the class of that league right now. I feel real good. I have a bet on them just to make the conference championship game. I think that's looking like a lock at this point. So I think the ponies are going to continue rolling. But NFL Survivor, did we want to hit on that here today? Do you have a lean and early week look for the fine viewers here on YouTube, who you're looking to take for week, what is it here, 6 of the NFL?
Yeah, so I decided when we start, we've been talking about Survivor every Tuesday, but I decided that we're far enough in now where I'm going to talk in the context of Circa Survivor and my strategy, because it's like, we can't just keep coming on here and telling you what the best Survivor pick is, because chances are you've already used that leg. Like when I was looking at this week, I said, okay, well, the clear-cut choices are the Chiefs, Dolphins, and Bills. But who has those left at this point? Like the vast majority of people watching this have likely already used those teams. I know I've used Dolphins on every entry. I've used Chiefs on every entry. I think I've used Bills on at least 2 entries. So it's like, what good is it for me to come on here and say, oh, well, use one of those 3? You probably don't have them available. If you do, probably want to consider using them because of something I call pick equity. I think it's the key to winning Survivor. You want to have, you don't necessarily want to be, it's not so much you have to go contrarian or you have to like take shots to save all these teams. It's just you typically want to be on a pick when not as many other people are on the pick. It just gives you, better equity in said pick. So if you have Dolphins left, like let's say you used the Lions last week, you have a Dolphins left, it's probably a good spot to use them just because so many people already burned through the Dolphins. Now, with that being said, Brian, these are some ugly dogs, but if you made me pick against the spread in those 3 games, Broncos, Panthers, and Giants, I would probably take the points in those 3 games, but, especially on Thursday night. I would have to be looking at the Broncos in the Thursday night game. The Chiefs, man, like they're just so due for a dud. Like they get their win. They've just been playing high profile game after high profile game, blow out the Bears. They get their win over the Jets. They didn't cover. Sort of a big win over the Vikings last week. Short week, rival. Broncos can score. I don't know if I'll get to the window with the Broncos plus the points, but certainly not trying to lay it with the Chiefs there. And I don't know if I would, want to go out with a Thursday night Survivor pick. The Thursday night games just seem to be weird. But that being said, I mean, they are a double-digit favorite. And when you get past those 3 double-digit favorites this week, Brian, it's slim pickings past that point, right? Like the one that sort of pops out to me as like a real viable option is the Eagles. Now, you've got to take a road favorite, but it looks like Vera Tucker, Elijah Vera Tucker's done for the year. And the Jets, we kind of talked about this. I talked about this with Mark last week on our Hustle Short version. The Jets, man, they play that game against the Chiefs. Then they have to go all the way out to Denver. And they get like this big sort of huge emotional win. Do they have enough juice to come back and win at home this weekend? I don't think they do. I would be very, very surprised if the Jets can find a way to win this game. I am not super high on the Eagles in general but when I say I'm not high on the Eagles, Brian, I mean, I'm not high on the Eagles, like going back to the Super Bowl and being like this big time contender in the NFC. I don't mind the Eagles to just simply go and beat the Jets. So Eagles are certainly a side I'd look at. And I'll throw this one to you because are people still just giving the Cardinals too much credit for beating the Cowboys without 3 offensive linemen? Because the Rams seem like a team that probably should bounce back and win this week. So I would say Rams is a pretty viable option in Survivor as well.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I actually don't. Look, I like Dan Alexander. He's an incredible human being, okay? Big Philadelphia Eagles fan. All right, but I don't have the Eagles in my top 5 of my power ratings, believe it or right now, despite the undefeated record. I know if anyone's listening in Philly right now, they want to, beat me to a pulp. That's okay. Good luck finding me. But I agree that the Eagles feel like they're kind of due for a big win, right? They've been living kind of dangerously now, but you mentioned taking road teams and Survivors, kind of living dangerously. I'm with you. The Rams, you're not going to have many times you're going to want to take them. They have been far better than expectation. I had a loser on them on Sunday. I took them against the Eagles as a short home dog. It's a game they were competitive in, just couldn't get the job done. The only other one, and this is a short favorite, and it's a team that I don't think many people would use until they're stuck towards the end of the year if they're still off. What about Atlanta against Washington? I feel Atlanta's going to win at home against the Commanders. The Commanders
Brian,
have been terrible since week 2.
Brian, this is where you get to the point in the season where, like, if none of those other options tickle your fancy, if you will, right? Like if you're not in the mood to lay it with a road, like, like our good friend Kelly in Vegas, she makes rules for Survivor, which I don't like. She's like, I won't use a road team. Like, I won't play in the division. And Chris and I always make fun of her for her rules. But if you've got sort of like parameters you keep like that, then, and none of those other things really like jive for you, then yeah, maybe this is the week where you have to pick what I call like, I'll pick my best bet, right? Like as long as it's a favorite, please, for whatever you do, don't use an underdog in Survivor. I can't stress this enough. I see people do this in Circa on a weekly basis. Do not use an underdog in Survivor. There's never a scenario where you should be doing that. You should always be, because you should always have a team that's favored. There should always be an option on the board where you're using a favorite in Survivor. It's not a plus EV thing to do to use an underdog in Survivor. Don't do it. So what you could do is, like, if you love one of these short home or short favorites, I don't know, Cincinnati looked a little bit better last week, but Seattle's coming off a bye. Like that, just I don't know if I would want that one. I guess if you like Jacksonville, but I have no interest in playing the Jaguars. They were in London for 2 weeks, have to come home and now play a Colts team that arguably should have had them week one. I don't care if it's Minshew. Minshew runs that offense just as good, in my opinion. Brian, do you think there's a huge drop-off in the Colts from AR-15 to Minshew? I don't. I don't think there's a really big drop-off with –
I actually had the Minshew-led Colts against the Ravens. I bet the Colts a couple weeks ago with Minshew, knowing he was the starter, and I wanted him to be as the starter. So, all right, that's Survivor. We gave you some midweek picks. I think at this point, Trigg, we're up against it. We could get out of here. I know you did a lot of game previews here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel, both college and NFL. So did I. Trigg mentioned Bills Giants. I covered that Sunday night game here. You can check out that free preview elsewhere. Until Wednesday, make sure you comment away down below here on YouTube. Hit us with the thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to the Wager Talk YouTube channel, what are you doing? Tons of great sports betting content each and every single day. He's Adam Trigger. I'm Brian Power. I'll get my pointing down by next week. Until next time, we'll see you guys. Let's cash some tickets.